Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 811. Pressure from all sides. Jun Moxie rolled his eyes and snorted coldly. Not mentioning the 9 Nether 14th young master. We can't endure the 3 holy lands or the misty illusory manor either. Do we have to kill them as well? Utter nonsense. What kind of reasoning is that? Brother-in-law, whether this matter is reasonable or not, we still have no choice. Long Crane said bitterly. The mystic phoenix has already been sent out. That means that in a short while, the peak experts of the misty illusory manor and the 3 holy lands will arrive. Furthermore, they are Saint King and Saint Emperor level people. If we don't let them in, we will become the public enemy of all humans. In that case, they will have ample reason to join hands to deal with us. And in a very righteous way too. But if we let them in, although we suffer some losses from the battle, we just need to let the forest recover for a few years and TNFA will still be TNFA. Besides, the reason they're coming in here to deal with the 9 Nether 14th young master is all for the sake of the well-being of the people and the peace of the world. We don't have any reasons to reject them. In fact, we need to lend our aid. What bullshit? Based on your logic, we should let them do whatever they like. They're here to make trouble and destroy our homes. But we should wave flags and cheer for them, lend them our aid, and receive them with smiles? Nonsense. Jun Moxie spat huffily. Also, since they're Saint King and Saint Emperor level people, do they still need our permission to step into TNFA forest? Couldn't they just come in? Who can stop them? Stopping them will be the equivalent of turning us into public enemies of humanity. I'd like to ask, when have people ever treated Xian beasts as their companions? Was hunting and massacring Xian beasts for their Xian cores not something that humans did? Well-being of the world. How has 9 Nether 14th young master ever harmed the safety of the world? The only ones he wants to conquer are just the 3 holy lands and misty illusory manor. What does that have to do with the world? Not to mention other stuff. Has the 9 Nether 14th young master ever sought to initiate harm against TNFA's Xian beasts? Why must you all help those hypocrites deal with him? Are those reasons you mentioned really valid? Jun Moxie asked sharply. Hearing these words, all the beast kings looked at each other in uncertainty. Indeed, before this, those who were trying to deal with the 9 Nether 14th young master only repeated the words, for the sake of all world. Everyone knew that 9 Nether 14th young master was a devilish person. The moment he was released, the world would experience a great calamity. But truthfully, when the 9 Nether young masters appeared, while they were indeed very domineering and their ambition was remarkably high as well, whether it be to unify the continent or to rule the world, their actions did not seem to affect the world at all. What did the world mean? It referred to the common people. No matter who the ones at the top were, the common people were completely unaffected. The common people only asked for the simplest stuff. Food for their bellies and warm clothes on their backs. It was good enough for them as long as they were able to continue their way of life. As for who got to rule, they did not care much. The world needed a sovereign ruler eventually, but as for the identity of the ruler, it wasn't very important to the commoners. The ones who truly felt threatened were the highest echelons of the continent, the 3 holy lands and misty illusory manor. As for the commoners, they were instead completely ignored by proud madmen like the 9 Nether young masters. It was similar to how a fearsome dragon did not concern itself with the opinions of the ants. They only viewed the experts who had the ability to hinder their conquest as threats. Brother-in-law means, could it be that all this was just an excuse? Long Crane widened his eyes with disbelief. When the beliefs a person held for a long time were smashed in an instant, no one would be able to accept that reality in a short time. Well-being of the world. Safety of the common people. Why the feck do they link everything to the fate of the common people? Those bunch of hypocrites. Jun Moxie spat with rage. Why must every single one of those feckers be so fake? Why can't they just admit straight up that they aren't willing to be stepped on under the feet of another person? That they aren't willing to let a foreign expert rule and unify the continent? What's the point of making so many ridiculous excuses? As if they're some kind of saints. There must always be an excuse for everything. It would justify and make every action more presentable. Big Bear said with sudden enlightenment. Excuse. Jun Moxie's sharp eyes pierced through the mist as he snorted coldly. Since that's the case, you guys back off first. Prepare to receive those Saint Kings. I'll stay here a little longer. I truly do not wish to face those dogfart hypocrites. Long Crane and the rest sighed and quickly left. Not long after, only Jun Moxie was left. No matter what, I will not allow the place that I've decided to call home and the home of the magnificent Xian beasts to be destroyed by those hypocrites just as they like. Jun Moxie narrowed his eyes ruthlessly as he thought in his heart. Perhaps you all had a great time bullying Tianfa and using them. However, things are different now. Because Jun Moxie is now in Tianfa as well. I'm not like those naive Xian beasts. Jun Moxie's face grew conflicted as if he were ruminating over something very intensely. After a long time, he gritted his teeth, and a crazed expression appeared on his face. Jun Moxie, am unwilling to be somebody else's dog. Even if they're Saint Emperors, or the misty illusory palace. Heaven watches as man goes about his deeds, and makes his destiny. Since I've settled down in Tianfa right on the eve of Nether 14th young master's appearance, it means that even the heavens are no longer able to tolerate the unbridled actions of those hypocrites. I shall let those self-righteous bastards know one thing. Those who scheme against others shall be schemed against by others as well. We will see whose schemes are deeper and who will be the one being toyed to death. Young Master Jun's figure blurred, and his corporeal body suddenly turned into an intangible shadow. With a light shake, even this shadow also disappeared. At the same time, the tremors in the ground also grew heavier. Beneath the ground, a great power that seemed intent on destroying everything also grew more and more powerful. It was as if that primordial demonic god would rise up from the dust at any time. A shrill screech rang out from the misty illusory manor's beguiling mist. In the 2 months the Jun family was overseeing the entire Tianfa forest and building a fixed lodging for themselves, the entire continent was uncannily quiet. A few days after the Jun family pulled out of Tianxiang City, many strange people arrived in the city, inquiring and asking about things in a covert manner, as if they were trying to find out some matters. Every day, there would be quite a few people sneaking into the old Jun family residence, exploring the huge manor. Jun Moxie's little courtyard was especially visited by these mysterious people. There was also the grave of the affectionate couple. That place that had appeared all of a sudden in the span of a single night was visited by even more people. Each tree and very single blade of grass was inspected carefully. Anything or anyone that was related to the Jun family was fully investigated by these unknown people. Tianxiang's new ruler Yang Huainong, heeding Li Yuran's advice, looked and listened to everything, not asking and acted completely oblivious to the whole situation. Finally, half a month later, the mysterious figures disappeared tracelessly in the span of a single night. Nothing was left behind, and it was as if they had never been there. Even the old Jun family did not suffer any damage. Nothing was moved. And even the grass and trees were completely unharmed. At the same time, all large families in the continent were roused into a fluster. Because the fairly powerful Duanmu family and Sikong family had fallen overnight. The businesses the two families had were cut off in just a single day. All their connections and clients practically cut their relationships with the two families at the same time. This was an unimaginably queer matter. Because no matter who was controlling the show behind the scenes, it shouldn't have been so clean and so swift. Furthermore, nobody was hurt or killed at all. But this unimaginable matter had indeed happened. Anything that came out of the two large families' workshops, no matter how exquisite or how beautiful, were suddenly undesirable. Even things that would originally sell for sky-high prices turned into worthless dog poop. Their stocked goods were completely unretailable. All their import channels were also mysteriously cut off. All kinds of trouble also appeared within the family. Many of the younger generation members stood up and left, taking away a significant portion of business shares. Strangely, any businesses they snatched away from the family managed to operate normally again, without any obstructions. Even if the business was completely lifeless a day ago, the instant it left the hands of the original family, it instantly recovered to its former position, and some even saw a period of great growth. In a single night, these two great families went nearly bankrupted. The only thing they could do except living off their savings was nothing. Strangely, these two large families did not display any unhappiness or disgruntlement. They only endured everything silently. The magnificent jewel halls that Blizzard's Silver City owned, spread out in various parts of all the cities in the continent, were suddenly boycotted against at the same time. The staffs and personnels were unchanged, but all the items were quickly repatriated to Blizzard's Silver City. Blizzard's Silver City similarly did not raise any troubles, as if these matters were exceedingly ordinary. In contrast, the Dongfang family, who recently formally announced their return, wasn't met with any resistance or suppression. If the three families could be said to have been suppressed because of their relationship with the Jun family, then the Dongfang family, which was the closest to the Jun family, was instead displaying signs of rapid growth day by day. What, then, was the meaning behind this? 1 month after the Jun family's departure, the Dongfang family announced their return. The collapse of the snow-covered Sword Peak and the driving out of all Xian beasts from Tianfa. This vow had already been fulfilled. Although the Dongfang family knew that wasn't a good time to announce their return. But since the vow had already been fulfilled and the entire world was watching them, they couldn't not return. Furthermore, there were many people anticipating and looking forward to their return. The members of the Dongfang family especially had grown impatient. After a full 10 years of hiding away, everyone in the Dongfang family could hardly bear it. They needed to vent their emotions. They needed to allow the once feared name of the Dongfang family assassins to herald their glorious return. After some long and difficult consideration and 1 month of observation, old Madame Dongfang decided that even if the three Holy Lands moved to suppress and shut down all their business, they would at most revert to their life as a hermit for the time being. It wasn't that big a deal. After all, with the status of the three Holy Lands, they couldn't possibly just gather in front of their residents with forks and pitches to slaughter them. After much thought and under fervent requests from other members of the family, the old madam finally announced their return. An announcement to the entire continent. The assassin's family of old has finally returned. Following that, the strangest events truly begun. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 812. Crisis of the Dongfang Family. Ever since Grandma Dongfang announced the comeback of the Dongfang family, the assassination requests came in like snow in a blizzard. It was as if the whole world reached the consensus of acknowledging the Dongfang family overnight. Furthermore, the bounties were exceptionally lucrative. Normally, the bounty for an Earth Xian expert would be 100,000 silver taels, but now the offer was even 2 to 3 times as much. The only problem was that those whom they hired to assassinate were all experts. If there were only 1 or 2 of these requests, the Dongfang family would not be at all bothered. It would be a lovely surprise for them. However, with so many of them, and so many of them demanding the assassination of top experts such as 4 of the 8 supremes. Even if the Dongfang family was very competent, there was no way it could handle so many requests. If the family dared take up the challenge, the obvious consequence would be the mortality of all the outstanding assassins of the family. The whole family would crumble. However, the family had already officially declared their comeback. There was no return, or they would turn into the laughing stock of the entire continent. And this would lead to the family falling back into obscurity. Hence, they were caught in a dilemma. The explanations given in each request were all reasonable and ethical in terms of the family standard. Some of the clients even sent deposits along with the request. All of them seemed very sincere. The situation could not have been prevented as well. The requests were sent back to the Dongfang family separately. The Dongfang family had local representatives stationed in various locations. They were finally mobilized once again after 10 years. So they were definitely more proactive than usual. Each of them could not resist accepting the numerous requests that would have been considered big deals 10 years ago and handing them over to the headquarters. Their urge to achieve clearly backfired. The Dongfang family was now in a terrible position. Grandma Dongfang was able to realize that this was retaliation from the 3 Holy Lands. It was indirect, but blatant. The 3 Holy Lands would never retaliate with force. They didn't want condemnation. So this was the best way to take revenge. And perhaps their main aim was to force Jun Moxie out of Tianfa forest. After all, it was Jun Moxie who initiated all the trouble. In the headquarters of the Dongfang family, Dongfang Wenjian asked cautiously, "Mother, should we contact Moxie? There's no way we can deal with all the requests, especially when they have time limits." Grandma Dongfang sat upright on a chair, thinking about something. She was infuriated when she heard what Dongfang Wenjian said. "You still call yourself Moxie's uncle when you said that? It's so obvious that what they want is to lure Moxie out. If you notify him, aren't we falling for their traps? If anything happens when Moxie returns, how are you going to explain to your sister? We will not sabotage my own grandson even if the whole Dongfang family is to perish." Grandma Dongfang's eyes were cold. "I will not show mercy to anyone who tries to contact Moxie." The Sikong family and Duanmu family endured all those sufferings for Moxie even though it could have been none of their business. Are we going to act more cowardly than them when we are Moxie's family? Wenjian, aren't you ashamed of what you just said? Dongfang Wenjian couldn't veil his embarrassment. It was only a mindless question and he didn't expect being reprimanded by his mother. Dongfang Wenqing sighed. "Mother is right. They are clearly trying to force us to ask Tianfa Forest for help. I am sure they have a very thorough plan to strike at Moxie as long as he reappears. They will not hesitate to kill Moxie this time given what Moxie has done to them. They will no longer merely send probing forces. But this also proves that Moxie is safe in Tianfa Forest. The 3 Holy Lands dare not enter the forest. It's unbelievable that the three Holy Lands will go to this extent to force out Xie. Grandma Dongfang looked gloomy. Therefore, we cannot give in and ask Tian Fa for help. Listen, if I hear anything about asking for Tian Fa again, I will not hesitate to expel that person from the family. Yes, mother. But what should we do about all the requests? Dongfang Wenqing asked. We cannot reject the requests anymore. What we can do now is tell them that the pay they are offering is unreasonable. Grandma Dongfang smiled. Do not execute any missions without permission. Then notify our representatives to stop taking new requests. For those requests we have already accepted, tell our clients that we demand 3 times as much pay. Try to drag the negotiation time as long as possible. If anyone refuses to pay a higher price, reject them immediately. Nice strategy, mother. Dongfang Wenjian's eyes twinkled. Nice strategy. It's just a temporary remedy. All it can do is offer us more time. If I am not wrong, they won't even hesitate to offer more money for the requests. Grandma Dongfang frowned. Therefore, we won't even gain much time. The fame of the Dongfang family shall not be compromised under my command. So we have to react to the situation step by step. If they increase the pay, we will still have to execute the assassinations. You should still be prepared for it. Preparation is not a problem. As long as we have enough time, we will be able to fulfill all the requests. If we are able to do it, we will leave a mark in history apart from bringing the family back to the height of its glory. With Grandma Dongfang's strategy, Dongfang Wenqing was more optimistic about the situation. Don't be blindly optimistic just because of a temporary remedy. We are still disadvantaged and the 3 Holy Lands are not easy to deal with. Do you know what I am most worried about now? Grandma Dongfang still looked gloomy and concerned. What? There are more concerns? As long as we have enough time, with our competent men, I am sure we will be able to achieve. Dongfang Wenjian was puzzled. What I am worried about is that the majority of our clients will decide to withdraw their requests. It will signify a very serious situation. Why? If so, aren't we less pressurized? Dongfang Wenjian was more puzzled. How stupid. If that is to happen, it means that there is no more possibility of thawing the relationship between the 3 Holy Lands and Xie. Just imagine what will happen if we receive a request of assassinating a weak person who is accompanied by a very strong expert from the Holy Lands. Are you so naive to think that they won't resort to this? If the target is stronger than what the client claims, we have a very good reason to reject it, don't we? Dongfang Wenjian asked. But by conventions, only the information on the subordinate of the person will be provided. What if the expert we can't handle is his guest? The 3 Holy Lands have so many of these kinds of persons. If this is to happen, then it will be a deadly trap that will guarantee our fall. If that's to happen, we can give up the mission. Why do we have to jump into a deadly trap when we know what it's about? Dongfang Wenjian sounded angry. Give up? We can, but we will have to pay a compensation that is many times more than the original bounty. How can we afford that if there are tens or hundreds of these requests? That's true, but why don't they do it in a straighter way? Dongfang Wenjian finally understood the seriousness of the situation and sounded more cautious. It's because the situation is not as serious yet. Although there's much tension now, the 3 Holy Lands still lack their target. As long as Xie doesn't leave Tian Fa Forest, the 3 Holy Lands cannot do anything. This is also why I emphasize not letting Xie know about the situation. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 813. Series of Schemes. The old madam continued slowly. The three holy lands still want their faces right now, but this face is destined to be unable to be kept for much longer. Our prediction will come true sooner or later. Therefore, we need to choose our future contracts much more carefully. For example, those supreme level hits are already far out of our capabilities. For those kinds of missions, we can reject them directly using this reason. The old madam continued. We will begin our negotiation from the lowest level, then concentrate our strength and attack the high Xian Qi level targets. A sharp gleam flashed in the old madam's eyes. This time, they want to force us and suppress us. But isn't it also the most excellent opportunity for our Dongfang family to expand and grow stronger? As the saying goes, fortune and glory are gained from risky situations. Where there are advantages, there are also disadvantages. It may not necessarily be impossible to turn danger into opportunity. Safe and risk-free ventures are also the hardest to profit from. This kind of situation where risk and danger are abound is exactly the best environment for opportunities to thrive. If we want to regain our glory, how could it not be without winds and rain? Even if we end up failing, what is there to fear? Mother is right. The three holy lands want to use such methods to suppress us and force Xie to come out. We'll let them have a taste of what it means to try to steal a chicken, only to end up losing the rice. We will use the strength of the small to fight the mighty. Even if we lose, nobody will laugh at us. But if we win, that would be truly amazing. Dongfang Wenqing smiled and agreed. As she watched her three sons walking out, old Madame Dongfang's optimistic expression disappeared in an instant. What replaced it was a heavy gloominess. Using the strength of the weak to contend against the mighty? Indeed. If we can pass through this tribulation safely, a great fortune will naturally follow. The Dongfang family will also become as mighty as a mountain, impossible to topple. But, while that is true, the tribulations this time are truly extremely hard to overcome. While the Duanmu family, Xikong family, Blizzard Silver City, and the Dongfang family were feeling extremely depressed right now, the three holy lands were depressed to the point where they wanted to vomit blood. At the very least, they were at least 10,000 times more depressed than those families. Previously, they had split their forces in two directions, sending 600 experts to Blizzard Silver City to stop Jun Moxie and Mei Shuaiyan's forces. But in the end, the entire group was wiped out. Furthermore, the strongest expert of that bunch, the elusive world of Immortals' palace Lord Mo Wu Dao's blood brother, Mo Xiaoyao, also lost his life there as well. Such a result, and such heavy losses, were undoubtedly unthinkable. In the instant they received the news, the usually calm Mo Wu Dao spat out a mouthful of fresh blood on the spot and fainted. Mo Xiaoyao was Mo Wu Dao's only kin. The two brothers had shared their life together for over 400 years. Just how deep was their relationship? The arrival of this news undoubtedly broke Mo Wu Dao's heart. Upon waking up, he immediately dispatched troops to flatten the Jun family, Xikong family, and anyone affiliated with them. However, he was stopped by the Saint King seniors. No matter what kind of losses they had suffered, it was still too unreasonable for them to act against worldly family clans. Moreover, there were still 9 saints in Tianxiang. Such a level of power was more than sufficient to shock the heavens and earth. After his plan was blocked by the upper echelons, Mo Wu Dao changed his strategy and requested to at least allow the 9 saints to kill Mei Shuaiyan and Jun Moxie to avenge his little brother. This proposal was unanimously agreed upon. No matter what, Mo Wu Dao's status was still the palace lord of the elusive world of immortals. If all his proposals were shot down continuously, there would be no meaning in his position as palace lord. How would he be able to convince the masses like that? Because of that, Mei Shuayan was surrounded and attacked. But what the Saint Kings did not expect was that Mei Shuayan actually disappeared after the attack, or rather, her soul was scattered and destroyed. But with her dying strike, she actually succeeded in pulling the three saints from the illusory blood sea into the grave with her. This was an absolutely irreparable loss of gigantic proportions. The patriarch of the illusory blood sea flew into a rage, and his heart ached incredibly. As for the elusive world of immortals and the supreme golden city, they only sniggered secretly at their misfortune. Because the saints on their side were completely unharmed, at most only suffering some light injuries. But the illusory blood sea had lost three saints. In the internal fights between the three holy lands, they had become the most disadvantaged side. Just like that, the three sides all waited silently for news from the six saints. But after a long time, there was still no news at all. Unsurprisingly, everyone became somewhat anxious. These saints were surely a little too draggy in their work. Mei Shuayan was already dead, so how much of a wave could a mere Jun Moxie stir up? After a long and nerve-wracking wait, the three holy lands finally received some news. The six saints had disappeared completely, while the Jun family had already moved out of Tianxiang. Those saints did not stay with anybody and had in fact been hiding in a cave far away. So when something happened to them, nobody knew anything. After waiting for some more time, the three holy lands were finally unable to keep calm and sent people to investigate. Only then did they find out that there was actually an intense battle south of Tianxiang City. The battle was so intense that mountains had collapsed and the ground had cracked. Even the rivers flowed in reverse. After that battle, no one from the Jun family was harmed. And on the second day after that battle, the entire Jun family moved to Tianfa Forest. By the time the three holy lands finished their investigations, 10 days had already passed. 6 saints had disappeared without a trace. Their life and death were unknown. Another several days later, the experts who were posted to stand guard at the peak of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains suddenly sent another piece of surprising news. The demon pupil saint, Leng Tong, had arrived at the Pillar of Heaven's mountains in a depressed manner, announcing his desire to stay there long-term and wait for the war for seizing the heavens. Now, the leaders of the three holy lands finally got confirmation that apart from Leng Tong, the other saints that had gone to Tianxiang had all died. All of them had lost their lives in the hands of Jun Moxie's master. This was simply a heaven-shaking piece of news. Upon hearing this piece of news, the leading characters of the three holy lands nearly fainted. Jun Moxie's master had fought 1 against 5, and the result was that all 5 saints had died. It wasn't clear what Leng Tong said, but all the crimes had been pushed onto Jun Moxie's master. Unexpectedly, Leng Tong actually kept this secret for Jun Moxie. But it also meant that the utterly disappointed Leng Tong was not willing to return to the Holy Lands anymore. He would rather remain atop the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, waiting for the war for seizing the heavens. Along with the report was a short paragraph from Leng Tong. It wasn't long, but each word hammered at their hearts. After seeing those words, Mo Wu Dao completely gave up on persuading Leng Tong to come back to the Holy Land. After that, he completely destroyed the message, not letting it spread to the public. But of the saints that saw them, quite a few began to search their hearts. Those words were akin to a drum, beating straight against their hearts and the deepest part of their soul. What sin did Tianfa commit? to deserve such relentless persecution? Could it be that the war for seizing the heavens is the source of all evils? The safety of the continent, is it just an excuse? Has the welfare of the common people really crossed our hearts? Of course, Mo Wu Dao did not actually put these words in his heart. Because all he was thinking right now was vengeance. Revenge for his younger brother Mo Xiao Yao. The enmity that caused him to be unwilling to share the same sky as his enemies. Blizzard's Silver City and the 600 perished souls. This was also an enmity that caused them to be irreconcilable. The blood debt of 9 saints, 8 perishing and only leaving one, who was so traumatized that he wouldn't even return to the Holy Lands. This was the greatest loss the 3 Holy Lands had ever suffered for the past 10,000 years. But how would this hatred be resolved? Jun Moxie had already slunk into Tian Fa Forest like a slippery little loach. For a place like Tian Fa Forest, even if a Saint Emperor Senior was willing to help out, he would still suffer a disadvantage if he went in alone. Moreover, while those experts from Saint Realm and above were still part of the 3 Holy Lands in name, they were no longer in control of the 3 Holy Lands palace lords. Mo Wu Dao, Huyen Ao Bo, and the palace lord of the Supreme Golden City, Shi Ruo Chen, discussed for a long time over the matter, and all 3 had their own proposal. Huyen Ao Bo's proposal was that they should kidnap all the people from the Dongfang family, Blizzard's Silver City, the Xikong family, and the Duanmu family and round them up, or directly kill them. That way, they could force Jun Moxie to show himself. But such a crazy idea was immediately shot down by the other 2. If they really went ahead and carried it out, the Saint Emperor's palace would be the first ones to go after them. Using the strength of the 3 Holy Lands that far surpassed the worldly powers to wantonly slaughter and bully the common people was something that was best not done. Mo Wu Dao had another suggestion, which was exactly what was happening to the large families now. Without using any military strength, they could scheme in the dark, using a soft knife to force their enemies to death. When the 4 families were forced to their wits' end, they would definitely look for Jun Moxie. Furthermore, what they were using was a series of schemes that contained a virtually endless stream of backup plans. As long as these families remained in the world, the 3 Holy Lands would have an endless arsenal of methods to deal with them. But as long as Jun Moxie came out of Tian Fa Forest, everything could be resolved. Shi Ruo Chen was of another opinion, but with 2 people against 1, he had no choice but to go along with Mo Wu Dao's gentler approach, even though he still felt very aggrieved and unresigned in his heart. Still, the perpetrator of their misery was Jun Moxie and his master. It didn't have anything to do with those other families. Thus, the only thing that could bring these 3 behemoths any comfort was that Venerable Mei is already dead. There was also the point that although Jun Moxie's master was able to fight against 5 saints and kill all of them, it must have been extremely tough for him as well. It was entirely possible that there were people who could fight and win against 5 saints in this world. However, it was impossible for them to do so without paying a price. If Jun Moxie's master was really able to fight and kill 5 saints with ease, without suffering any injuries, would the Jun family still need to run away? This was the most obvious point. Therefore, all 3 factions were waiting patiently for Jun Moxie to show himself willingly. The Saint Emperor's palace had already promised at the moment Jun Moxie left Tian Fa Forest and reappeared in the world, the 3 Holy Lands would be allowed to mobilize their saint-level experts to kill him. If Jun Moxie's master came out as well, they would be given the clear to send out Saint King-level experts. This face had to be redeemed no matter the cost. Otherwise, the 3 Holy Lands' reputation would be completely tarnished. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Interest, Chapter 814. 9 Nether Pathway. Unexpectedly, the Sikong family and Duanmu family actually took a passive stand in the face of the pressure, huddling up and enduring silently. There wasn't the slightest bit of intention to seek help from Jun Moxie at all. The Blizzard Silver City simply recalled all their members without hesitation. The Blizzard Silver City was undergoing a period of reconstruction, and with so many people coming back again all of a sudden, it definitely increased the pressure. However, these people also increased the labor force, so the city was still fine. The Dongfang family had been forced onto an exceedingly thorny path as well. But this bunch of people was even more stubborn. They would rather fight back to the bitter end than ask for Jun Moxie's help. This series of unexpected results caused the three Holy Lands to turn somewhat anxious, especially Mo Wu Dao. From the looks of it, the pressure they were exerting was too weak. Mo Wu Dao was about to direct the next round of actions when the situation changed again. At this time, the Saint Emperor's Palace received an emergency summons from the Misty Illusory Manor to immediately send their strongest Saint King and Saint Emperor experts to Tianfa Forest. Join up with the experts from the Misty Illusory Manor and stop the 9 Nether 14th Young Master from breaking through the seal. Just as the 4 Saint Kings and the 2 Saint Emperors from the elusive world of immortals were about to set off, Mo Wu Dao approached one of the Saint Emperor. Senior Jean, Junior wishes to trouble you to help with a matter since you're going to Tianfa Forest. Mo Wu Dao's tone and posture was exceptionally respectful. What's the matter? This Senior Jean, who was in a hurry, stopped and asked. Senior will definitely see that little thief Jun Moxie now that you are going to Tianfa. Mo Wu Dao said with a light smile. This junior simply hopes that senior can help me pass him a single sentence, Dongfang. Duanmu, Sikong, and Blizzard Silver City are finished. Dongfang, Duanmu, Sikong, Blizzard Silver City are finished? That's all? Yes. Fine. I've remembered it. I'll definitely help Palace Lord pass the message. Senior Jean muttered with disinterest as he soared into the sky and disappeared. Mo Wu Dao's white robes fluttered in the wind as he looked at the empty sky with a wry smile. Jun Moxie, even if you crawl like a rat into your little hole, I will still make you crawl out again obediently to accept your death. After killing my little brother, you think that you can hide away like a gutless turtle and continue living peacefully? There aren't such great deals in the world. I, Mo Wu Dao, will let you learn that there are some people who cannot be offended in this world. If you offend some people whom you cannot afford to provoke, even the lives of your entire family will not be enough to pay for the crime. Jun Moxie revolved the yin-yang escape art to its maximum capabilities, and when he dove 40, 50 zhang downwards, he could already feel the powers of the beguiling mist weakening. At 100 zhang, he could feel that he had already completely escaped the confines of the mist and he could move through the ground at ease. This beguiling mist is much weaker than the 9 Nether first young masters under the snowy mountain. No, the two are simply incomparable. Jun Moxie thought silently to himself. With a flash of his body, he traveled rapidly through the ground. When he had moved for several hundred zhang, he suddenly felt a strange energy ripple before him. And the further he went, the stronger it felt. It was as if the stones and mud before him had changed into iron. Looks like this is the seal that the illusory manor set up. Jun Moxie stopped and looked up with slightly raised eyebrows. Or perhaps this is the exit of the 9 Nether's land? At this moment, from a distance near Jun Moxie, a loud roar suddenly rang out. This roar was akin to a volcano erupting. Stunned by this sudden roar, Jun Moxie felt his head buzzing. Although he had used the energy of the 5th level of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune to protect his body, it could not completely block out the shocking sound wave. After a long time, he finally regained his senses, only to see that the entire layer of earth was trembling violently. This 9 Nether 14th young master is indeed powerful, as expected of a legendary character. Jun Moxie could not help but exclaim with admiration. From that roar alone, Jun Moxie could clearly hear the unwillingness and the fury in his voice, as well as a bone-deep untamable spirit. The legendary figure he had come to find was right in front of him, but Jun Moxie hesitated. What if he's not appreciative after I let him out? Releasing the 9 Nether 14th young master was undoubtedly a double-edged sword. If he was not careful, he would hurt himself and others. Although the 3 holy lands were exceedingly despicable, the 9 Nether 14th young master was obviously a scary demon who would not submit to anyone also. While he hadn't hurt any ordinary people in the past, it didn't mean that he would be the same still. Similarly, not everyone knew how to repay kindness. There were plenty of people who were capable of harming their benefactor, and such incidents were not uncommon. Jun Moxie couldn't not defend against it. Who could say that this 9 Nether 14th young master wasn't this kind of white-eyed wolf? Jun Moxie considered his options carefully, forming his conjecture based on the things in the 9 Nether 1st young master's letter and Mei Shuiyan's account of the 9 Nether 14th young master. If this 9 Nether 14th young master really came out, he would definitely turn into the greatest tumor in the side of the misty illusory manor and the 3 holy lands. But this madman was only interested in ruling over everything, which meant that Tianfa Forest was also one of the targets for his subjugation. What a headache! Jun Moxie stood there silently for a long time, unable to make up his mind. If this madman really had intentions to subjugate Tianfa Forest, the threat he posed was definitely much more terrifying than the 3 holy lands. This fellow was not just a madman, he was also an arrogant madman, and an unreasonable madman at the same time. If this madman was really an ungrateful person, and turned around to bite him, he would definitely be no match for him right now. As Jun Moxie was still hesitating, he suddenly remembered Long Crane's words. The mystic phoenix has appeared. The seal is broken. His eyes lit up. With or without me, the seal is already broken. I might as well take this opportunity to sell a favor. If it works, that'll be for the best. If it doesn't, I'm not truly in much danger with the yin-yang escape art. At the most, I'll just lure him away from here. Now that he had found an acceptable reason, young Master Jun moved quickly. In that moment, he was somewhat anxious in his heart. I must be fast. Otherwise, if that madman manages to break out before I reach there, wouldn't it just be a wasted trip? Even with the purple chi supporting his yin-yang escape, greatly improving its power, Jun Moxie still spent a great deal of strength before finally burrowing a hole through that donghua place. Finally, with a so sound, he flew inside. Feck! Jun Moxie could not help but curse aloud as soon as he stepped into the place. Why is it so cold? Surely this is a little too extreme. Even my soul is about to freeze. As expected, this was actually a narrow passageway. It was completely dark, and it was impossible to see where it led. The temperature was in fact several times lower than the peak of the snowy mountain. The howling cold wind was akin to sharp swords, cutting towards him while carrying a terrifying sinister aura, knives. Jun Moxie had only just thought of these words when the cold wind suddenly increased. Hidden within the chilly winds were actually countless sharp blades. They were long and thin, but virtually unbreakable. As the sounds of the wind grew greater, the blades also became more condensed and more urgent. In the end, whether it be the sound of the wind or the blades cutting across the air, everything had formed a terrifying, storm-like howl. Jun Moxie could not help but purse his lips with shock. Such disgusting weather. To think that this Nether 14th young master was actually able to stay in here for so many years. All of a sudden, feck. What's going on? How did this bloody Nether's frigid wind and the Nether's frost blade get so big all of a sudden? Which idiot did this? Could it be that another little fellow came over again? But this young master isn't dead yet. How could anyone come over? With a loud roar, Jun Moxie saw a ghostly figure flying over from a distance away. The sharp wind blades actually emitted metallic grating sounds as they collided against this figure's body, causing sparks to fly into the air. The figure completely ignored the blades, and in the blink of an eye, he had already disappeared from Jun Moxie's eyes, rushing towards the direction the Nether's frigid wind was coming from. Jun Moxie wiped a layer of cold sweat from his brows. So strong. Even a saint-level expert would not dare to charge into such a dense concentration of blades without blocking or dodging. But this fellow actually ran right into it as if it were nothing. Clanging sounds rang out from the ground, and Jun Moxie went forward to take a look. What he saw caused him to suck in a breath of cold air. A Nether's frost blade was picked up by the wind, falling into his hand. Surprisingly, the little blade had actually lost its edge. This was a super strong metal that did not belong to this world. From Jun Moxie's initial assessment, the sharpness and sturdiness of these blades were even stronger than the normal blades that he refined using his power of gold. If it was placed in the Xian continent, any one of these Nether's frost blades would be a highly contested divine weapon. Even more amazing was that it was so light that it was almost weightless. Such a sharp weapon actually lost its edge when it smashed against that person's body. That person's body was simply a little too hard. From the looks of it, he should be the legendary Nether 14th young master. In any case, other than this madman, there didn't seem to be anyone else in this place. As for these blades, although they couldn't hurt the Nether 14th young master, could it be that they couldn't hurt other people? These were actual treasures. If the power of gold was applied to it and it underwent a bit of refining, its strength would surely rise to another level. The material of these blades was so unique, and they were so light as well. As long as they were refined properly, they would surely display amazing effects. At the very least, they would be better than the other blades. With so many materials here, it was no different from pies dropping from the heavens. Jun Moxie's face lit up with joy as he reached out and grabbed all the blades in front of him. Following the wind, he ran forward happily and collected 9 Nether's frost blades as he went, those on the ground, those in the air, even those that were lodged in the walls. The further he went, the more of this stuff he found. Each blade was only as thick as a chopstick, and each shone with a chilly light. An icy feeling that permeated to the bones could be felt from them just by holding them in one's hands. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 815. Void Shatter. Mei Shuiyan, who was cultivating inside the Hongjun Pagoda, suddenly heard some sounds. Opening her eyes, she saw numerous strange little knives dropping out from empty air. The sky was thick with blades like a rain of hailstones. In just a short while, a large pile of blades had formed on the ground. Even then, the blades hadn't stopped falling. Carefully making her way over, Mei Shuayan was completely stunned as a thought formed in her mind. This can't be the legendary 9 Nether Frost Blade. If it's the 9 Nether Frost Blade, where is Moxie right now? The 9 Nether Frost Blades were the famed weapon of 9 Nether Young Masters. Apparently, each 9 Nether Young Masters that appeared in the Xian continent all had an inexhaustible supply of 9 Nether Frost Blades. In the Xian continent, such weapons were practically invincible, divine-grade weapons. Furthermore, the blades had never been allowed to be lost. Even if they were destroyed, they were retrieved very carefully. Although Mei Shuayan had never truly seen one before, she had heard about these blades before. Seeing such a huge pile of these strange blades before her now, she naturally recognized them in an instant. Could it be that Moxie went into Tian Fa's forbidden ground? Mei Shuayan could not help but grow worried. Jun Moxie collected all the blades along the way as he traveled. After some time, he realized that he had already collected several thousand such blades. And there were still an uncountable number of them in front of him. Behind him, more were still flying over. The deeper he went, the wider the path became. Deep marks could be seen on the walls, most likely a result of the 9 Nether 14th young master venting his frustration. From this, one could tell that the quality of this wall had reached an almost indestructible level. Jun Moxie took out blood of yellow flame and slashed at the wall with all his might. However, he had only managed to leave a faint scratch. Just what kind of material is this? How come it's so hard? No wonder even this freak can't get out. Jun Moxie finally understood. Further down the path, there was a faint glow of strange light. Jun Moxie walked over slowly. Looking up, he discovered that he was in an extremely odd cavern. The roof of the cavern was covered with a layer of multicolored material that emanated an immeasurable amount of dignified aura. It was seemingly indestructible and full of a mysterious strength. Jun Moxie looked at it, finding it oddly familiar. After a closer examination, his mouth opened slightly with shock. This is a formation and it's a formation derived from the 9 Nether First Young Master's intriguing variant formation. Although the effects are not as amazing as the one personally set up by the 9 Nether First Young Master, the strength of this are still obvious. To think that the misty illusory manner would actually use the 9 Nether First Young Master's methods to deal with the 9 Nether 14th Young Master. Wasn't this the most amusing thing in the world? One truly wondered if this could be counted as the 9 Nether Young Masters lifting a stone to smash their own feet. The cavern was filled with 9 Nether Frost Blades, and piles of them scattered carelessly. Taking a casual look around, there should at least be several hundred thousands of them. They should be the result of the many years of accumulation. From the looks of it, the 9 Nether 14th Young Master did not really care much for these things. Jun Moxie's eyes lit up, and with a few quick movements, he soundlessly tucked away more than half of all the blades. Since the 9 Nether 14th Young Master couldn't use so many swords, he might as well gift them to me. I can make the greatest use out of them. But Jun Moxie was still moving cautiously, only taking some from each pile. As for those hidden in the darkness, he took more from them. He had only just finished tucking away the blades when the 9 Nether's frigid wind suddenly grew heavier. A black shadow flew out with a sound, cursing and complaining. How strange. There's clearly nothing here, but it's acting strange for no reason, causing this young master to make a wasted trip. This fellow who called himself a young master completely did not look anything like a young master. This man's long hair was sloppy and splayed wildly on his head. His face was stained black. and it was almost impossible to make out his features. Only his eyes shone brightly like a pair of lamps. His clothes were tattered and torn, and he looked exceedingly wretched. Based on his current appearance, even the most downtrodden beggar would feel somewhat consoled if he could see this person right now, so there's someone more wretched than me. As he walked out of the cavern, he lifted his head and glared ruthlessly at the multicolored light above him. I'll like to see just how long this broken thing can keep this young master here. As he spat the words out, he instantly flew into the air. This fellow completely did not discover Jun Moxie's presence. From this point, Jun Moxie felt much safer. It looked like his yin-yang escape art was truly heaven-defying awe. However, Jun Moxie did not dare to let him continue bashing the barrier madly. Not to mention other things. With him standing so near, he could not guarantee that he wouldn't be knocked out. If he simply fainted, it would already be considered light. But just that roar alone would likely burst his eardrums. The 9 Nether 14th young master was about to start charging when he suddenly heard a light voice beside him. 9 Nether 14th young master? What are you smashing around for? You've already smashed around for several hundred years. Aren't you tired of it? Who? Who's there? Come out. Come out here for this young master. The 9 Nether 14th young master instantly felt the hairs on his skin stand on their ends. He even felt as if his heart had suddenly stopped moving. The two icy-looking eyes on his head nearly fell out of their eye sockets. Over 300 years. It had been over 375 years. He had been trapped in here for so long. Not to mention humans. He hadn't even spotted a single ant or earthworm. Solitude had become his habit, and loneliness a pastime. The 9 Nether 14th young master had already lost all hope long ago. He knew that there was no possibility of a second person appearing in here. But right then, a voice sounded out right beside him. Although the voice wasn't loud, to the 9 Nether 14th young master, it was akin to a thunderclap exploding in his ear. With a so sound, the 9 Nether 14th young master's figure turned into a series of afterimages. From near to far, and from far to near. In a short time, the entire cavern was filled with the 9 Nether 14th young master's afterimage. Thereafter, each of them morphed into a physical form. It was as if millions of 9 Nether 14th young masters lined up in this cavern. In an instant, Jun Moxie's body was covered in cold sweat. This level of skill was simply too amazing. Of all the experts that Jun Moxie had seen before, none of them could match this 9 Nether 14th young master in speed. Even Mei Shuiyan and himself could not reach such a level. In Jun Moxie's eyes, such shocking speed seemed to have reached the speed of light. It was simply too fast. Come out. Who is it that dares to act like a ghost and toy with this young master? The 9 Nether 14th young master shouted as he watched every corner carefully. If you're not coming out, this young master will not be polite and drag you out. You can't even find me and you want to drag me out? What big words. Jun Moxie rolled his eyes lazily and pinched his nose as he spoke aloud in a mysterious voice. 9 Nether 14th young master. Your face indeed does not turn red when lying. Impressive. Impressive. But I'll truly like to see how you'll drag me out. Those words of yours. Do you even believe them yourself? Lock. The 9 Nether 14th young master was so angry that his messy hair flew into the air. He waved his arms and a black light shone in his eyes. At the same time, an unknown aura burst out from his body. The instant the word left his mouth, Jun Moxie suddenly felt the entire cavern freeze, as if the entire space had turned into a large block of ice. Spatial lock. The 9 Nether first young master actually knew such a shocking technique. This was definitely not something that Mei Shuiyan's World Cage could compare with. World Cage was simply an ability that made use of the power of heaven and earth to lock down a small area. But with a wave of his hand, 9 Nether 14th young master had directly locked down the power of heaven and earth, turning this entire space into a dead zone. However, although this ability was overbearing and strange, it wasn't able to affect young Master Jun, who was still in the miraculous state of the yin-yang escape art. Jun Moxie could clearly sense the frozen state of the space around him. But as long as he did not move, the 9 Nether 14th young master would not be able to discover him. Even so, Jun Moxie was still locked within this space. This was the first time he'd met a person who could restrict his yin-yang escape to such an extent. Although he hadn't truly detected anything. Still not coming out. If you still don't come out, this young master's next move will be Shatter. The 9 Nether 14th young master warned angrily. If you reveal yourself to this young master right now, we can still talk nicely. Otherwise, a person at your level should know what is called void shatter. He paused for a moment, as if he were allowing the hidden man time to consider. After some time, he continued. Since this young master can freeze space, shattering it will not be anything difficult for me. Are you really not coming out? Then, do not regret it. Once this space shatters, it will be broken into countless fragments. If you still don't show yourself, this young master will shatter this space immediately, and your body and soul will be scattered. The hidden person still did not say anything. The 9 Nether 14th young master waited patiently. A faint smile appeared on his face as if everything was under his control. He was sure that this mysterious person would definitely feel threatened. Because from the beginning of time, no one had ever managed to survive space being shattered. The man hidden in the darkness may be very powerful, but he was still a human. As long as it was a human, there was no escaping this technique. But even he would not use this technique casually. The energy cost of using Void Shatter was exceedingly great. With just a bit more effort, he would be able to break the seal. He didn't want to waste all his energy here for nothing. If he used that technique without caring about the consequences, the date of his escape would be greatly delayed. A long while later, the 9 Nether 14th young master did not move, and the man in the dark did not move as well. Some more time passed, and the 9 Nether 14th young master grew curious. Could it be that that person had just left even under these circumstances? Surely not. Unable to hold himself back, he cleared his throat and tentatively asked, are you still there? Immediately, a proud voice rang out. I'm here. I've been here the whole time. Aren't you going to shatter the space? I'm waiting for you to shatter it. Why aren't you shattering it? Could it be that you need such a long time to prepare your shatter? Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 816. There's a condition for helping you get out. This voice was wispy and ethereal. Wrapping around the entire cavern, it was nearly impossible to determine where it came from. The voice didn't seem loud, but the hint of arrogance in it was like a fierce slap on the 9 Nether 14th young master's face. The 9 Nether 14th young master instantly felt his face grow hot and red. After waiting so confidently for half a day, he thought that he would get to hear the other person's plea for mercy. But who would have thought that he'd actually been taken for a monkey? As long as one was human, it was impossible to endure something like this. Much less the proud 9 Nether 14th young master. If he couldn't even deal with this cowardly fellow, How would he claim to dominate the entire world? The 9 Nether 14th young master was utterly enraged. Shatter. He practically shouted the words out in rage. Along with his word, a nearly tangible black light burst out from the 9 Nether 14th young master's body, blacker than the darkest night. The messy hair on his head stood straight up, fluttering wildly in the air. It looked like seaweed violently tugged by currents and also like a large group of sinister snakes erecting their necks and waiting to strike. His eyes seemed to have lost its color, only leaving a darkness as deep and profound as a black hole. In the same time that the black energy burst out, the 9 Nether 14th young master raised both his arms and pressed them down forcefully. In that instant, an unprecedentedly violent storm rose up like a hurricane from the ground. He was clearly pushing downwards with his palms, but the hurricane was rising from the ground up. Ka! 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 Jun Moxie clearly heard the unique sound of space shattering. It was like an exquisite piece of porcelain that was knocked. First, fine cracks appeared, which quickly extended to fill the entire piece. Bit by bit, it broke until the entire thing collapsed. Jun Moxie was able to see each part of the process, and every minute detail in perfect clarity. His eyes were clearly unable to see something like that, but he indeed felt that he had seen everything. This was an exceptionally hair-raising and odd sensation. The entire space had truly been shattered. In an instant, the entire cavern turned into an avaricious black hole. It was completely cut off from the rest of the world. It was as if this broken space did not belong to this world anymore, but was a part of another world's space that had been forcefully moved here. Everything felt exceedingly out of place. However, Jun Moxie, who was still in the yin-yang escape state, was completely unharmed. Void Shatter. It was indeed capable of annihilating everything, returning everything to nothingness. The only thing left that couldn't be destroyed was the void itself. As Jun Moxie heaved a sigh of relief, he could not help but to feel amazed. This is the void shatter of legends? If one could really annihilate space itself, what else could they not destroy? No wonder this 9 Nether 14th young master was such a renowned legendary character that even the 3 Holy Lands and misty illusory manor were unable to tolerate. Such a heaven-shocking power was displayed in such a seemingly effortless manner. The 9 Nether 14th young master loosed a breath lightly and stood up. All of a sudden, he felt an extremely regretful sensation in his heart. That moment of rashness was truly somewhat not worth it. Apart from having exhausted a great portion of his cultivation, and hurting his essence chi, he hadn't had anyone to speak with after being locked in here for the past few hundred years. Now that someone had finally come, he was actually angered in a matter of a few sentences and ended up shattering that person. Under the immense power of Void Shatter, even if one was only in a spirit state, it was impossible to survive. Even if that person's stealth abilities were more impressive, he was just a human at the end of the day. How could he dodge a sure kill technique like that? The 9 Nether 14th young master sighed again. That one attack of his had drained him of nearly 1/3 of his strength, causing him to become endlessly dejected. His anger rushed up again, and he scolded huffily. Truly a bastard doesn't understand the immensity of the heavens and earth. Did you think that this void shatter is very fun? This young master has been forced to use up so much essence chi. Because of that bastard, this young master will have to delay my return for a long time. What a well-deserved death. As soon as he finished his rant, a mocking voice rang out from the silence. Is this the so-called void shatter? How powerful. This seat was almost hurt by it. Before this, I truly hadn't imagined that such a shocking technique existed in this world. 9 Nether 14th Young Master. Your reputation is indeed well deserved. The 9 Nether 14th Young Master instantly felt the hairs on his body stand up on their ends. This lawless madman, in this moment, was covered in goosebumps. Ever since the day he was born, this was the first time that he had experienced such a terrifying feeling. That person is actually still there. He's still alive. How can it be? But this time, the 9 Nether 14th Young Master did not attack anymore. He sucked in a deep breath and calmed himself down. With a wave of his tattered sleeves, a portion of the shattered space was swept aside. Thereafter, he sat down. They were in the same cavern. But he was sitting in the void of another world. And yet, his presence was real. Lowering his head, he snorted. If Sir is only here to play a joke, you can go now. This young master still has proper things to do and is not in the mood to accompany you. If Sir has come for another reason, please feel free to speak. This young master's ears are open. With just a single sentence, the 9 Nether 14th Young Master had wrested the initiative back. After his moment of anger, the 9 Nether 14th Young Master instantly caught hold of Jun Moxie's weakness. Because since he'd appeared in here, regardless of how heaven-defying his cultivation was, there must be a reason. And the reason was undoubtedly himself. The 9 Nether 14th Young Master instantly understood this point. For this reason, he said this sentence that reversed the positions of the host and the guest. It didn't matter what the motive of the visitor was. His ultimate goal was certainly to negotiate with him. So all he needed to do was to wait and see. Even if this wasn't his usual way of doing things, he simply did not have any method to determine the other party's position. So right now, although he'd regained his position of initiative, his heart was even more depressed. The well-reputed 9 Nether 14th Young Master was just sitting quietly in a different space and waiting. He could choose to sit and wait indefinitely, but Jun Moxie couldn't. Jun Moxie even suspected that the moment he left the yin-yang escape state of void, he would immediately be swallowed up by this strange spatial thing. Perhaps that would be the beginning of another transmigration. Still, such a result was completely unacceptable to Jun Moxie. This is shattered space. Who knows what dog-shut abnormal thing will happen? He couldn't take this risk. So Jun Moxie remained in the void state of the yin-yang escape art as he sighed. 9 Nether 14th Young Master. Your abilities to scheme are indeed extraordinary. The 9 Nether 14th Young Master snorted coldly, not saying anything. In fact, his eyelids did not even twitch. Jun Moxie looked at this renowned terrorist of the Xian continent with interest. No matter how he looked, he couldn't see the 9 Nether 14th Young Master's face. Even when the 9 Nether 14th Young Master raised his head, he could only see some obscured features. The 9 Nether 14th Young Master could actually block the sensory detection of all 6 senses. Or perhaps, this was just the effects of some special technique and wasn't a purposeful act. I'm a person from Tianfa Forest side. Jun Moxie was naturally unwilling to wait on like this, and he stated. I've come to discuss a deal with the 14th Young Master. The 9 Nether 14th Young Master remained sitting still, and even his hair did not move at all. A bland voice came out of his mouth. Continue. Say everything in one go. Jun Moxie was not angered as he continued in a calm voice. As long as the 14th Young Master continues ramming against the seal, it will likely shatter completely in just a few more days. And at that time, You will be freed from your cage to roam the skies like a dragon and a tiger returning to the mountain. However, there's one thing that you have no choice but to defend against. The instant you break the seal, the Nine Nethers pathway will also disappear. I'm sure you know this point very well too. So, from the moment you break the seal, you will no longer have any paths of retreat. None at all. You can only resist your enemies forcefully. But to break the seal, I believe you will need to expend a great amount of energy as well. Even with the 14th young master's abilities, it won't be a simple thing. As I estimate, you will only be left with a third of your strength at most, or perhaps even less. 1/12 is more likely the case. Which means that the moment that you break through the seal will also be the time when your strength is at its weakest. I believe you're also very clear that the 3 Holy Lands and the misty illusory manor will definitely not allow you to come out safely. So right now on the outside, there should be at least tens of Saint Kings and Saint Emperor experts waiting to receive you. Jun Moxie's tone turned heavier at this point. Both of us are intelligent people. You should know that I'm not just saying frightening things to raise an alarm. The instant that you break through that seal will be the best and easiest time to kill you. In the battle to come, you have at least 80% chance of being killed. At best, you only have 20% chance of escaping. And that too, by the skin of your teeth. Even if you somehow manage to escape from their encirclement, you will still be faced with the relentless pursuit of all your enemies. With the pittance of strength you're left with after breaking through the seal, it's completely insufficient to overcome that trap. You will die without a shadow of doubt. After he finished saying all that, Jun Moxie closed his mouth and waited. The 9 Nether 14th young master wasn't in a hurry, but he was in less of a hurry. At the most, he would just run again with everyone. As for resources, this brother has stocked the Hongjun Pagoda full with them. Do I really need to be scared of you? In any case, I've already told you the results. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 817. 9 Firmament First Old Master. In reality, this was also a huge problem that the 9 Nether 14th young master had recognized long ago. It was something that everyone already knew long ago. All Jun Moxie did was to say it out clearly. The most important part was in the words that were supposed to follow after that. However, Jun Moxie completely stopped speaking and kept the suspense. He could afford to wait, but the 9 Nether 14th young master definitely couldn't. Although the 9 Nether 14th young master was a quick-tempered and rash person, his intelligence surpassed that of ordinary people. The wisdom he had accumulated for so many years was definitely not small, so he naturally understood what it would take to destroy the seal. On the outside, there were definitely many experts waiting for him. If he gave them enough time to reinforce the seal, or even set down a new one, he would be doomed to be stuck inside here for another few centuries. This was something that he wouldn't be able to bear. If he was able to bear it, he wouldn't have been ramming that seal so tirelessly. You're right. The 9 Nether 14th young master snorted coldly as an unresigned look came over his face. Gritting his teeth, he spat out, "Your words are completely right." But could it be that this young master didn't know about such obvious things? This young master had already thought of it several hundred years ago. Is there a fart's worth in saying all this now? He was unresigned. Because the tempo of the discussion was wrested by Jun Moxie again and again, guiding the topic. He couldn't ignore the questions even if he wanted to. To the 9 Nether 14th young master who had been proud and arrogant all his life, this was simply a Nike'd insult. This was a disgrace that he was forced to accept. Because of this strong unwillingness and depressed state, the normally civil-mouthed 9 Nether 14th young master, who referred to himself as a young master, actually began spouting vulgar words now. This hidden person was simply too infuriating. Although what he was saying was all the truth, every word was still as worthless as a fart. You're right. My words indeed don't have much worth for old farts, but to the proud 9 Nether 14th young master, it's still quite useful. Jun Moxie said pretentiously. If he couldn't force this fellow to be in a disadvantageous position in this talk, later negotiations would not even be able to start, let alone conclude favorably. So Jun Moxie began to stir up his emotions again with the facts. The 9 Nether 14th young master may be feeling exceedingly depressed. But similarly, when had young Master Jun ever been looked down upon in such a manner before? I'm speaking to you, but you dare to ignore me as if I'm not even there? So what if you're the 9 Nether 14th young master? I'm the one offering you help right now, not the other way around. The one seeking help still wants the person helping him initiate the talk. See if this daddy doesn't toy you to death. The 9 Nether 14th young master's breathing quickened and grew ragged as his chest rose and fell more intensely. He'd been trapped in this place for a few centuries already, and even if his accumulated wisdom had been higher, he had nearly forgotten how to interact with and battle wits against another person. But the first person he came into contact after so many years was actually a sinister schemer, with wits not any inferior to his. Furthermore, it was an exceedingly shameless bastard. Jun Moxie's mouth was something that could cause even a dead man to jump out from his coffin from anger with just a few words. Much less a person who hadn't been in contact with any humans for hundreds of years. The 9 Nether 14th young master was so angry that his brain was nearly flooded with blood. Ah! You're saying that I'm not even comparable to a fart? I'm not comparable to a fart? The 9 Nether 14th young master roared with rage. Unable to control his anger, he dashed out of the separate space and smashed his fist heavily against the wall. All the strength in his body was concentrated on that one fist. The strength of this fist could simply be said to be capable of toppling mountains and flipping oceans over, shocking even the heavens. Hong! A loud boom rang out, and the 9 Nether pathway shook violently. Following which, the loud sound reverberated around the entire cavern, echoing endlessly. Jun Moxie's ears nearly turned deaf from the commotion. Luckily, he'd managed to dodge into the Hongjun Pagoda in time. Otherwise, even his brains might have been turned into mush by this fellow. Jun Moxie clucked his tongue endlessly as he looked at this sight. Even if you're not comparable to a fart, there's no need to shout about it so loudly, right? Look at how excited you are. Is it really something to be so proud of? What kind of weird personality does this guy have? I'm not comparable to a fart, comparable to a fart, fart. The 9 Nether 14th young master's voice rang out loudly, passing to the outside world. On the outside, the misty illusory manners beguiling mist had already disappeared without a trace. Around 16 white-robed experts and 8 or 9 stalwart men dressed in ragged robes stood around the entrance, looking at each other speechlessly. All of them were thinking the same thing. Could it be that this fellow had been stuck in there for too long, and now that he was finally about to come out, he turned crazy from excitement? He's not comparable to a fart. What was the meaning of those words? If that overpowered fellow was not even comparable to a fart, do we have to treat this matter with such seriousness? If you're not comparable to a fart, what would we become? As expected, the 9 Nether young masters were indeed all extraordinary people. To think that one could shout words like that out in such an excited manner, truly too domineering. After a long time, The cavern finally fell silent again. The 9 Nether 14th young master had already returned to his shattered space and sat down again. Only, his temples were throbbing ever so lightly. Jun Moxie came out from the Hongjun pagoda and coughed awkwardly. Actually, I didn't mean it like that, please believe me. I definitely wasn't saying that you're not comparable to a fart. Shut up. The 9 Nether 14th young master's voice was low, but it was suppressed to an extreme level, as if he could explode at any moment again. One more word of nonsense from you, and you can scram immediately. This daddy isn't in the mood to talk with a rascal like you. I was only clarifying some facts for you. Why are you so defensive? Jun Moxie had just finished saying a sentence when the 9 Nether 14th young master raised his head, while a black-colored light blazed madly in his eyes. Laughing bitterly, he continued. Fine. Let's talk about the serious stuff. The 9 Nether 14th young master slowly clenched his fists, released them, clenched his fists again, and released them again. His knuckles popped menacingly as he scowled dangerously. Quite obviously, his anger had already reached an extreme point. Why do the actions of this fellow seem so alike to a common ruffians on earth? Jun Moxie scoffed in his heart. However, he still continued swiftly. Of course, the danger you're facing is not impossible to overcome. As long as you are willing to promise me one thing. I can help you to weaken that seal by at least a third, allowing you to escape smoothly. Are you interested in such a deal? What do you want me to promise? Are you really able to weaken the seal? The 9 Nether 14th young master's body shook lightly, but he didn't raise his head. My request is very simple. After you get out, you must not make Tianfa Forest the battleground. And, before you defeat me, you cannot move against Tianfa's Xian beasts, and you cannot invade Tianfa Forest. Jun Moxie's expression grew serious as he continued in a heavy tone. You can fight against the 3 Holy Lands and Misty Illusory Manor as much as you like, but the battlefield must not be Tianfa Forest. Tianfa Forest must be preserved as a sacred land until such time as we must clash. How is it? If you're willing to make the vow, I will weaken the seal for you, allowing you to keep more of your strength, increasing your chances of escaping and regaining your freedom. The 9 Nether 14th young master finally raised his head and asked in a disdainful voice. Before I can defeat you? Who the hell are you? Did you think that you're very impressive? Jun Moxie sighed helplessly and shook his head. As expected of a madman. At this critical time, the priority of this fellow was actually not whether or not he could escape and leave this dongate place. Instead, he wanted to determine a victor among them. Just what kind of idiot was this? I may not be very impressive, but at least in this 9 Nether pathway that you're so familiar with, you're still unable to do anything to me. In fact, even by using all your techniques, you still cannot determine my position. Is this not sufficient to convince you? Also, are you really confident that you can handle having me as an opponent on top of the Misty Illusory Manor and the 3 Holy Lands? Jun Moxie asked dryly. Leave your name behind. At the very least, I need to know your name. The 9 Nether 14th young master fell silent for a moment and asked. Unexpectedly, he'd actually agreed to Jun Moxie. Although he was arrogant, he still respected opponents capable of posing a threat to himself. The mysterious techniques that Jun Moxie displayed before was something that the 9 Nether 14th young master couldn't do. So although Jun Moxie's words were rather jarring to the ears, they wasn't baseless. This hidden person was clearly also a powerful expert. The 9 Nether young masters never denied facts. Although he felt extremely uncomfortable in his heart, facts were still facts. I don't have a name. Even if I had one in the past. I don't remember it anymore. But throughout the years, the people from the three holy lands have been in constant conflict with me as well. In the end, they couldn't do anything to me. Because I've always referred to myself with the words, Old Master. The three holy lands called me. Jun Moxie paused for a moment as a queer smile appeared on his face. His voice remained serious and calm. 9 Firmament First Old Master. 9 Firmament First Old Master. The 9 Nether 14th Young Master mumbled. The more he recited it, the more he found it unpleasant for the tongue. Could it be that apart from the 9 Nether origins, there were other locations with this kind of weird names? 9 Nethers? 9 Firmament? 1 heaven and 1 hell, opposing each other. Was it really such a coincidence? Or was it done purposefully? Heaven versus hell is one thing, but I'm already the 14th of my name, and you're the first. I'm the 14th young master, and you're the first old master. Isn't that clearly toying with me? Feck. The 9 Nether 14th young master cursed with rage. Which son of a beach had such a poor naming sense? I don't have a choice either. I only found out towards the end that the three holy lands gave me this nickname as a precaution in case you came out one day. With both our names opposing each other, we would end up fighting among ourselves to the death. It's not exactly targeting you specifically either. As long as any of the 9 Nether young masters heard this name of mine, they would definitely end up being antagonistic of me. Jun Moxie said without restraint. His words voluminous like the outflow of river water when the sluice gates are opened. This treacherous heart of the three holy lands is also one of the reasons for my visit today. I hope you can understand this point. There's also another thing I need to make clear. The reason why I had no intentions to make an enemy out of you was because I did not want to benefit those bunch of hypocrites. It's not because I'm scared to be your enemy or that I do not have the capabilities to fight you. You need to understand this. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 818. Breaking the Seal. Escaping. I can understand and agree with this. With your capabilities, if you wish to make me your enemy, you don't need to really fight. You just have to hold me back here and let those outside reinforce the seal. The 9 Nether 14th young master's tone had become more mild as he said this in a matter-of-fact tone. But the despicable methods of these bastards really makes people sneer. To give you such a nickname for the sake of dealing with this young master. It truly is intolerable. The 9 Nether 14th young master said through gritted teeth. Clearly this 9 Firmament First Old Master that came from the three holy lands and misty illusory manner that Jun Moxie fabricated had enraged him greatly. Precisely because of this. When two tigers battle, one party will definitely be injured. The enemy of an enemy may not become a friend, but it must not become an unresolvable animosity. Jun Moxie adopted a reasonable tone and said solemnly. Which is why I came here today. The promise that you seek is not a problem to this young master. It doesn't matter where the battlefield is. They are all the same. Right now, if you really help me. Your request is so ordinary. What problem is there for this young master to agree to it? The 9 Nether 14th young master said in deep thoughts. Also, it is not late for me to deal with Tianfa after the showdown between the two of us. After the winner is determined. If I still cannot win you in the end, even if you do not mention it, this young master will not be so thick-skinned to also lay his hands on the juniors of Tianfa. From his words, this 9 Nether 14th young master revealed his immense self-confidence. as if he had already managed to escape and turned into the ruler of this entire world. Jun Moxie felt the corners of his lip twitching, but he continued in a solemn tone. A man does not go back on his words. I can give you a clear time period. Since we both have enmity with the three holy lands and misty illusory manor, then when the day both the three holy lands and misty illusory manor are destroyed comes, it shall be the time you and I have our showdown. By then, we would both have no worries about repercussions, so naturally we can battle as much as we want. There's also one more thing I have to make clear. I cannot appear personally to join forces with you to deal with them. Because reputation-wise, you are still the public enemy of the continent. I need your understanding on this. Perhaps you do not care. But me, I can't. Jun Moxie laughed bitterly and said, I admit I'm not like you in this matter. Yet another flattery. Huh. This is an even smaller matter. You fight your own. I fight my own. Do I, the Nether 14th young master, need someone's help when it comes to doing whatever I want to do? But you're really too cowardly. Why do you fear these people? As expected, the Nether 14th young master was extremely pleased, laughing haughtily, with an extremely condescending and disdainful tone as he said, the three holy lands. Misty illusory manor? They're merely a bunch of despicable hypocrites. What holy land? Illusory manor? Bullshit. They're incapable of withstanding a single blow. A straightforward person speaks straight to the point. In this case, I can take it as our terms have been agreed upon. Jun Moxie smiled. That's right. I agree to it. This young master always keeps his promises. It will not change throughout the ages. The Nether 14th young master scoffed, but burning excitement could be sensed from his voice. But how are you going to help me break the seal? Are you really confident in doing it? This seal is simply a piece of cake to me. Jun Moxie pointed to the 5-color seal that still existed above his head and said, in a while, I will use my skills and exit from the center of that position. After I exit, naturally, there will be an opening in this seal. Hee. And when there is this tiny little opening, you will be able to save at least 1/3 of your energy even after getting out. It'll be far more than 1/3. The Nether 14th young master rolled his eyes and waved his hands. Since you made it sound so easy, what are you still waiting for? Hurry up and get on with it. Jun Moxie chuckled. Then you better look carefully at where specifically I am exiting from. The black glow in the eyes of the Nether 14th young master glistened, and he replied deeply. Don't worry. I am more clear of this than anyone else. Jun Moxie snickered mentally. Looked like during those few hundreds of years, this fellow had practically groped every millimeter of this seal millions of times. I believe he is extremely familiar with it. Under the close observation of the Nether 14th young master, this indistinct silhouette hovering in the air flashed and floated over to the central position of the 5-color seal and stopped there. After that, it slowly vanished. And the seal at that portion really had begun to undergo a subtle change. As if, the power of that seal was slowly diminished and extinguished, bit by bit. It was going through subtle changes every single second. Although it was extremely minute. But how familiar was the Nether 14th young master with this seal? The sturdiness of this seal was the reason he had thoroughly tasted suffering. Jun Moxie could trigger off changes in the seal within such a small time. Just this skill alone was enough to alarm the heavens and astonish the world. Thinking back at the position where Jun Moxie had appeared at earlier, this Nether 14th young master couldn't help but click his tongue. So this scoundrel had always been hiding this close to me. This alone is rather impressive. But it doesn't seem like it is something truly impressive. This is merely a backdoor method. Your true capabilities may not necessarily be truly stronger than mine. This sentence was not because of his arrogance and blind self-confidence. Jun Moxie could remain hidden simply because he had no animosity or killing intents. As long as Jun Moxie wished to harm the 9 Nether 14th young master, then immediately, the 9 Nether 14th young master would notice him and make his response. Just then, Jun Moxie's eerie voice suddenly appeared amidst the void. Look carefully. I'll take my leave first. You do what is best for yourself. Then the space trembled and that blurry silhouette really vanished without a single trace. And at the same time that blurry silhouette disappeared, a soft pop sound could be heard. As if a sharp iron needle had gently popped a balloon. In the 5-colored barrier on the seal, a small, unnoticeable opening appeared. It was even finer than a strand of hair. A scent of fresh air came in from the outside. The 9 Nether 14th young master greedily inhaled it. This scent he hadn't smelled in 375 years. His eyes brightened, and laughing maniacally, he flew up. A dazzling black glow radiated from his entire body. With a roar, he rammed onto the seal like a bolt of lightning. After hundreds of years, there was finally this chance of turning things around. The 9 Nether 14th young master could no longer wait for this moment. He had even forgotten that he had just used up his strength. He could not wait to get out. Boom! The area around the seal began to quake. A bump on the seal formed in that central position where the opening had appeared on. It was this little progress that had gotten the 9 Nether 14th young master's spirits up. With another furious roar, he started to strike away at it crazily. Consecutive booming noises rang out in this area. Each strike was as if heavenly lightning had struck against a volcano. The mountains outside began to shake, and boulders of thousands of Jin bounced, knocking loudly against the ground. Countless of ancient trees that were 10,000 years in age trembled violently. Even the thick branches began to fall off the tree due to the quakes. The entire Tianfa forest was trembling and quaking. All the Xian beasts had a feeling as if they were about to experience the end of the world. The sound was getting louder and more intense. That maniacal, haughty laughter could also be heard. All this signified that a demon that had plagued the world was about to emerge and return back to the world. The experts from 3 holy lands and misty illusory manor all wore a serious and stern expression. Their eyes were fixed on that bump that was gradually forming on that 5-color seal. No one had imagined that the seal would be broken this early. And a grave look hung upon their faces. The leader, a man donned in white clothes and a high hat, knitted his brows. He quickly passed a few orders and waved his hands. 6 purple-clothed men silently lay in ambush in the south. 6 white-clothed men disappeared to the east. 3 men in blue suddenly jumped up and landed on the 3 tallest trees. Although the trees were shaking tremendously, they seemed completely unaffected, as if they had become one with the trees. There was 11 men donned in robes and 9 burly big men in ragged garments. These big men were extremely buff and all wore an intrepid expression. But the look in their eyes was a little unfocused, as if they had sustained severe injuries. These 9 burly big men was the senior beast kings of Tianfa. There were 9 places to that 5-color seal. In these 300 over years, these 9 beast kings in Tianfa had dedicatedly guarded each corner, using all their energy to match the seal and resist the impacts from the 9 Nether 14th young master. And amidst these recent attacks, they could all finally no longer support it and sustain severe internal injuries. Otherwise, the 9 Nether 14th young master would not have been able to break the seal. Even though this was the case, even though they knew that the misty illusory manor did not have good intentions, and the 9 Nether 14th young master was about to escape, they still insisted remaining and guarding this place, not budging a single step from their duty. Further away, Big Bear, Long Crane, and the other beast kings of Tien Fa watched this scene anxiously. The white-clothed leader looked at the 9 of them. A look of guilt flashed across his eyes as he said in a low voice. The moment the 9 Nether 14th young master. We must kill him with all our strength. We absolutely must not let him escape from Tien Fa forest. All 9 burly men jolted and looked at him in shock, fury evident in their eyes. One of them in the center stepped forward and said, Brother Chow, we must not do that. If we begin a battle here, then what will Tien Fa do? Aren't we going to be destroyed completely in this battle? Brother Lu, if we do not do it here, are we supposed to wait for the 9 Nether 14th young master to recover and come back to massacre all of us? That Brother Chow hid both his hands in his sleeves and said darkly. Besides, this place is far from the human population and away from the rest of the world. It is the best place to resolve this hazard. But did we not agree back then, that no matter what or when, the battle must not take place in Tien Fa? That is why we agreed to guard and watch the seal. Did you think that we did not know the effects of the mist? That big man said angrily. Today, are you going to just forfeit that promise? Indeed, Tien Fa is far away from the human population, but Xian beasts of Tien Fa are we not lives as well? We have also protected the continuant for 10,000 years. So what? That person had barely finished his sentence, when suddenly everyone's face changed. That Brother Chow did not have the time to finish his sentence. As he hollered, set up the formation. Finally, with a loud earth-shattering boom, that 5-color seal shattered into pieces and flew into the air, disappearing in the air with a flash. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 819. A battle that shocks the heavens. From a black hole, a black human figure came shooting out with a maniacal laughter that shook the world, flying straight into the skies. Behind him, that black opening suddenly warped and vanished from sight. The instant that black figure rushed out, all 11 robed men on the ground began to strike, closing in on him from 11 directions. The distance between them were exactly the same, as if these 11 people were one single entity. Midair, all of these 11 men shouted at the same time, power of heaven and earth. Cage. Instantly, from heaven to the ground, all the energy from the surroundings converged and became an enormous enclosed space, completely trapping the 9 Nether 14th young master, who was rocketing into the sky. Within it, there was no pause in the movements of these 11 people. They began raining attacks down like crazy, throwing their fists and kicks. Within seconds, it was as if 11 destructive hurricanes had suddenly appeared, converging into a devastating tornado, heading towards the same position. They did not use a single weapon, because they all know that there was no point in using their weapons at this moment. Only by staking it all with their Xian Qi, to speed up exhausting all of the 9 Nether 14th young master's remaining strength. That was the only correct way. 9 Nether 14th young master was a little regretful that he was still a little too reckless. Because although he had saved much energy by breaking the seal, he still paid a relatively hefty price for it. Especially in that act of forcefully using Void Shatter in a fit of anger with the 9 Firmament First Old Master earlier. It had caused him to waste quite a lot of energy, almost 1/3 of his strength. Plus the whole series of impacts left all his internal organs in great discomfort. Currently, his energy consumption had far exceeded his expectations. The bottom line was that of all things he shouldn't have done, he shouldn't have used Void Shatter. And because he was in such a rush to break free, he did not have the time to recuperate and recover, asking the other party to help break the seal. And he did not expect the 9 Firmament First Old Master to be capable of causing a crack in the seal in just a few moments. As the opening began to fade away, naturally he had to begin his attacks. This whole series of change in events was making things worse for the 9 Nether 14th young master. The current situation may not necessarily be better than him breaking the seal on his own. Currently, all he wanted to do was to find a place to recuperate and treat his wounds. Why would he even want to bother with these people? But right now, he had to deal with them even if he didn't wish to. Because any random one of these guys before him was powerful. These 11 people had formed a giant powerful current with their joint forces. If he did not deal with them carefully, he was afraid that he might sustain injuries from this mere greeting with his remaining 1/5 of his entire strength. The 9 Nether 14th young master was furious. Mid-air, he angrily shouted, "Get lost!" With a turn of his body, he triggered a black-color hurricane. In a split second, dark fog had filled up the surrounding air, rushing and rising up rapidly. Within seconds, with that turn of his body, the world cage that was set up by 7 Saint Kings and 4 Saint Emperors was completely shattered. Then, his body continued to rocket higher, and with another spin of his body, 11 bolts of energy went shooting out at the same time with a whoosh. Sharp and fast like lightning, but loud like the sound of thunder. All 11 men cried out at the same time, suddenly closing in at high speed in the air. With exceptional coordination, they all joined hands and formed a giant circle, forcefully receiving this terrifying attack from the 9 Nether 14th young master. With a chain of booming noises, all 11 of them spit blood out at the same time. They let go of their hands at the same time. The person with a high hat was the fastest, and the blood had came up his throat, but he had already leapt forward. He had already appeared beside the 9 Nether 14th young master by the time the blood left his mouth. Like a sharp sword, the blood splattered heavily onto the 9 Nether 14th young master with a loud bang. He then pressed both his palms onto the chest of the 9 Nether 14th young master. The 9 Nether 14th young master violently coughed and snapped his head around. With a deadly glare, he thrusted his right hand out. There was a black flash and a loud boom, and this Saint Emperor expert fell from the sky, defeating a Saint Emperor in a single strike. But he did manage to block the 9 Nether 14th young master for a while. The remaining 10 people instantly closed in. The 9 Nether 14th young master roared furiously. He launched a series of violent attacks. But he still remembered the promise he had just made. He soared higher into the sky as he fought, trying to not cause too much damage to Tien Fa Forest. Following a series of miserable cries, all 10 figures fell from 10 different positions at the same time. All of them were violently vomiting blood. The sounds of their bones shattering and breaking could be heard only when they had fallen halfway down. Although the 9 Nether 14th young master in the air had severely wounded 10 strong enemies and was pleased with his battle results, he still couldn't help but jolt and spit out a mouthful of blood that was the color of ink. His blood was actually black. Then, like a meteor, his figure turned around effortlessly despite his injuries mid-air, and he fled southwards. I mustn't battle for long. I have to leave as quickly as possible. This was what he intended. But things did not happen the way he wished for them to go. At this moment, Purple rays of light suddenly appeared in the sky along with 6 men donned in purple, appearing at the speed of light, blocking his way from the front. Every single one of them had the attitude of bringing him down along with them. 6 positions with both offense and defense. And this sort of wondrous combination destined that if 9 Nether 14th young master tried to avoid the front and escape, these 6 people were capable of giving him a deadly strike in an instant. The moment he escaped, no matter if it was left, right, up or down, there would be an opening. But these 6 people positioned themselves to seal off all possible openings. He could only get out of this predicament by facing them head-on. War of attrition. This was the combined war of attrition the 3 Holy Lands had specially studied and created to deal with people like the 9 Nether 14th young master. The 9 Nether 14th young master instantly understood the situation before him. With a loud cry, his body suddenly swelled up in the sky. His strange hair began to stand up, and the black air surrounding his body suddenly swelled up and exploded. His body flashed for an instant. Suddenly, there were 6 more 9 Nether 14th young masters in the air. Every single one of them was real. Each one of them took on one of the 6 purple-clothed men, multiplying his body and striking at the same time. Hong! There was a loud explosion. Although these 6 purple-clothed men had the formation they could rely on, they were still no match. The moment both sides came into contact, all 6 of them instantly felt as if their arms were broken, as if their chests were struck by a giant hammer. They didn't even have time to cry out in agony before they were sent flying far away. There were 2 people whose limbs and head were suddenly detached from their body as they were flying halfway, their blood raining from the sky. The 9 Nether 14th young master did not gain much of an advantage after this attack. Once again, he spat out 4 mouthfuls of black-colored blood. The black glow in his eyes dimmed. He somersaulted in the air, using this enormous energy to send himself flying in the northeast direction. His body still needed to borrow strength in the air. But in this northeast direction was where these experts who had attacked him laid their trap. Without any noise, 6 white-robed men flew up. The enemy had yet to arrive, but they had already gathered their ferocious Xian Qi and braced themselves to lack their attack. The 9 Nether 14th young master did not have much strength left after breaking the seal. Repeatedly met with such intense battles when he was barely halfway out, he was like an arrow at the end of its flight. Looking at these 6 white-clothed men launching their attack within a blink of an eye, he suddenly let out a maniacal roar. He forcefully halted himself in the air. His ragged clothes flew about. The eyes of 9 Nether 14th young master instantly turned into 2 endless dark holes. He had no expression, but his killing intent filled up the entire sky. Suddenly, the corner of his lips curled into a cruel grin. Lock! These 6 people had just gotten close, but the first 3 people suddenly froze in place, unable to move in the air. Despair was evident on their faces. The 9 Nether 14th young master did not hesitate. The moment the word lock had left his mouth, he had instantly pressed his arms downwards. The hurricanes rose up, like 10,000 giant dragons that suddenly rose from beneath 9 Nether 14th young master, surrounding him. Then he coldly declared, "Shatter." Hong! The space that the 3 white-robed men were locked in suddenly distorted and turned into a black hole. And instantly those 3 men vanished without a trace in an instant. The black hole continued to warp and slowly faded away. Void Shatter. A Saint Emperor. 2 Saint Kings. To die a sullen death like this. But this strike was also clearly the last strike the 9 Nether 14th young master could put out. He was forced to use this deadly move of Void Shatter once again. But it had stripped his entire body of all the energy he had left. It had completely milked him dry. He did not intend to use it. But these 6 men in white had clearly used a profound formation. If he faced them off head-on, although it may be a short duration, but it would be enough for the 11 men on the ground to rush back up. When that happened, it would really be all over for him. If this battle this time used up too much energy, if he did not even have the strength to dodge back into that dark cavern as unwilling as he was, he would really be killed by this bunch of people here. Thus left with no way out, the 9 Nether 14th young master finally used it. The effect of Void Shatter could be seen instantly. 3 people died, and 3 people retreated. The 9 Nether 14th young master had used up all of his remaining energy. Like a bolt of lightning, he fled from the place. He shouted in a hoarse voice, "It's been 300 over years. You guys have never changed in your habit of being despicable. This young master will settle this score with you sooner or later." At this moment, on a big 3 not too far away trees, 3 dazzling sword lights came shooting out, like 3 huge rainbows. 3 exceptional divine weapons went piercing towards the 9 Nether 14th young master. This was the real fatal move. All the sacrifices and arrangements earlier was merely for the sake of exhausting the 9 Nether 14th young master's remaining energy. The real fatal move was dealing the fatal blow at the most crucial point in time. Absolutely killing him in one strike. The 9 Nether 14th young master could indeed no longer avoid these 3 swords. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 820. Such tyranny. The 9 Nether 14th young master howled, his eyes emitting wild black light. He only had enough time to lift up his right hand that was radiating black light and strike his own skull. A wave of black chi came pouring out. At this moment, the 9 Nether 14th young master's look was that of extreme resentment and grudge. Black-colored mist suddenly began to rise again within his body. This was a self-destructive method to hasten the potential within his own body. He did not even use this method back then. But today, he was forced and cornered to this state. But it was too late. The swords were extremely fast. Whoosh! A sword had already passed through the left side of his chest. The shiny blade of the sword stuck out from his back. Black blood splattered everywhere. The 9 Nether 14th young master cried. With a twist of his body, all his muscles, bones and blood vessels turned as hard as steel. The Xian Qi on the sword had not even managed to explode when it was completely broken. His body was harder than this steel. And he even flew 20 over Zhang with the help of the impact from this sword. He was still escaping. Screech. It was another sword. This sword had pierced through from the back, coming out through his chest. The 9 Nether 14th young master coughed violently. With another ring of his body, yet another divine sword broken on his body with a snap. Just at this moment, the third and final, fatal sword came. This sword had stabbed through his lower abdomen, emerging through his back between his shoulders. From bottom to up, piercing across almost his entire body. Every single one of these 3 swords was enough to injure him fatally. All of them had hit their target. But the 9 Nether 14th young master howled furiously at the sky. The black chi surrounding his body thickened so much that it completely concealed his body. Then with a pop the third divine sword broke. Then, he viciously thrusted his hand that was stained with black-colored blood outwards. 5 fingers stabbing into the skull of that expert who had dealt the third sword. When he withdrew his hand, the traces of black bloodstain were replaced by fresh red blood. And that expert's head turned into a skull that had been left in the open for 10,000s of years the moment the 9 Nether 14th young master's fingers left him. Like a fallen leaf, he fell from the sky. Then, the 9 Nether 14th young master let out another loud cry. The 3 long swords on his body still radiated light, reflecting the golden sun rays. But he continued to advance almost another 100 zhang while carrying these 3 swords and disappeared completely with a whoosh. From start till end, he did not land on the ground. He kept his body in the air the whole time, not relying on anything for support, disappearing right after this great battle. Just like that, he fulfilled his promise to Jun Moxie. The price he paid was a body filled with fatal injuries. At this moment, the 11 people that landed on the ground were ascending again. But it was too late. Everything had happened within seconds. How fast this entire battle was. It was as if within the blink of an eye, almost 30 experts had exchanged blows with him. Some died, some sustained injuries, and some fled. In a flash, the blue sea turned into mulberry fields 1. And only those who had witnessed this battle could truly comprehend and understand the meaning of this sentence. Only the 9 Nether 14th young master's bitterly resentful voice came through the air from far away. Just you guys wait. A legend. Truly a legend. The 9 Nether 14th young master had sustained continuously severe injuries, and his strength was completely used up. But in such a pessimistic situation, he could still manage to seize an opportunity and escape, and even leave his pursuers behind in the dust. Amazing. Truly amazing. Jun Moxie had concealed himself and watched the battle midair the whole time. He had intended to render his aid each time he saw the 9 Nether 14 young master in danger, so as to gain more favors. After all, there were more advantages than disadvantages with the 14 young master helping him share the pressure from the 3 holy lands. But the subsequent outcome of the battle had left him dumbstruck. He broke out in cold sweat. It was not out of fear, but out of shock. The 9 Nether 14th young master battled 26 of the top experts of the world with only his own strength, severely injuring many of them, killing 6 of them, and finally escaping with his injuries. Jun Moxie's jaw almost hit the ground. And this fellow, even till the very end, still kept in mind the promise between them, engaging most of the battles in midair. He was willing to suffer this disadvantage as opposed to landing on the ground. This was a genuine and real monster. He could call himself a monster, but to compare his current capabilities to that of 9 Nether 14th young masters, to say that he paled in comparison was speaking too highly of himself. They truly were incomparable. They were of completely different levels. The alliance of misty illusory manor and the 3 holy lands, those 26 experts who were like immortals even with the upper hand of all their schemes and various plots, had lost 6 men to him. 7 and 8 of them sustained heavy injuries, and almost every single one of the rest had light injuries. These peak experts who rarely gathered looked at each other in dismay, a look of extreme shock and disappointment on all their faces. Even with so many peak experts gathered, with such a thorough arrangement and setup, and everyone with the resolution and determination to fight with their lives. With all these advantages, they could still not crush that monster that plagued the world. He still managed to escape. Looking at all the blood stains on each other, everyone was at a loss for words. Met with the combined strength of 8 Saint Emperors stopping him, 18 Saint Kings taking turns to battle, sustaining 3 absolutely fatal injuries. But he still managed to leave after snapping those swords. A remarkable feat that shocked the universe like this. It was truly unimaginable. The white-clothed leader Saint Emperor lifted his right arm. A dazzling bright light shot up high into the sky and exploded in the air with a loud boom. Following it, from a faraway place, was a sound of explosion. Those outside for the follow-up have already received the news. They will take over the pursuit and kill the 9 Nether 14th young master. With that demon's current state, he may not really be able to escape safely. This person said, knitting his brows. His face suddenly turned pale and a trail of fresh blood came dripping out from the corner of his lips. It was not a difficult thing to merely toss this signal rocket out, but to toss it up into the sky. That was not something a normal person was capable of. This toss had clearly triggered the internal injuries he had forcefully suppressed earlier. Brother Chow can rest assured. Although the 9 Nether 14th young master is strong, after using large amounts of energy to break the seal and battling with all of us, he is bound to be on the verge of death. I believe this time, he will definitely not be that lucky. Another person sat cross-legged on the ground and said as he practiced his arts to treat his wounds. We cannot be too blindly optimistic. The 9 Nether clan has a uniquely strong regenerative capabilities that surpasses all of us. We have all seen it before. Although this demon sustained serious injuries today, but it has yet to reach a level that can kill him. Brother Chow sighed as he frowned. He thought for a while before speaking again. This demon forcefully broke the deal today. Although it was earlier than our expectations, but his strength will definitely have been reduced greatly. With the combined attacks from all 26 of us, that immense power alone is enough to cause severe injuries to his internal organs. The 2 hits I had landed broke a few of his ribcage. And with the strike by the Saint Emperors from Illusory Blood Sea and the formation of the 6 men from Holy Land, forcing him to use Void Shatter, it definitely used up the remaining potential he had. Those final 3 swords. He pointed to the parts on his body as he spoke. The 3 swords hit their targets, 2 on the chest, while the 3rd completely pierced through his belly. They were all fatal wounds. But even after such deadly attacks, he did not die on the spot. And he could still seize the opportunity to escape so quickly that we could not give chase. The 9 Nether 14th young master, as expected of his reputation. It's more impressive meeting him than hearing of him. This sort of shocking capabilities. We are definitely incapable of surpassing it in this life. Another man in purple coughed, blood dripping from the corner of his lips. Clearly, his internal organs were injured. Indeed, this sort of injury is enough to cause 3 Saint Emperors to perish at the same time. Even if we ignore his extraordinary physique, this sort of cultivation is impossible for us. Let alone killing 6 of our men in the battle. 2 Saint Emperors. 4 Saint Kings. If the strength he exhibited just now was equivalent to 40% of his total strength. When put into this perspective, everyone sucked in a cold breath of air. They felt a chill crawling up their back. In the end, this demon still managed to come out. With regards to whether those outside would be capable of intercepting and killing the 9 Nether 14th young master successfully, although they were comforting each other, but in reality, they all had the same thought in their mind, the chances were absolutely low. The most elite forces were all gathered here. The strength of the people here was the most extravagant lineup the 3 Holy Lands could come up with. No one knew the extent of the hidden capabilities of the misty illusory manor. But this lineup for the 3 Holy Lands was truly their limit already. Aside from the legendary ancestors of every family, whereby no one knew if they were still in existence, Saint Emperors were already the strongest forces the Holy Lands could deploy. Even if those outside were lucky enough to meet the 9 Nether 14th young master, they may not be capable of holding him back. Perhaps they would even have to pay with their lives. It was impossible for the 9 Nether 14th young master to die. A 9 Nether 14th young master with only 40% of his strength was already so terrifying. If the 9 Nether 14th young master completely recovered all of his strength, how would it all end? The moment he recovered, he would begin a carnage of an unprecedented scale. One that will be the arrival of the day the 3 Holy Lands end. No one had ever thought that even after gathering so much strength, so many peak experts, with such thorough setups, they were still incapable of killing a 9 Nether 14th young master who was not even at his full force. All of them who had gathered laughed bitterly. Yes, they laughed bitterly. At their sort of level, they were no longer fixated on life and death. Towards the 6 men they had lost in battle earlier, they may feel a sense of loss and found it a pity, but they did not feel too sorrowful. Life and death was merely that. Everyone will have to go someday, sooner or later. Saint Emperor Chao, I need you to give Tian Fa an answer. The leader of the 9 burly men stepped forward. He had a burly and fierce appearance. Fury evident in his eyes. Back then, the 3 holy and 1 ferocious lands and the misty illusory manor made the vow together. First for war for seizing the heavens, the second for killing the 9 Nether 14th young master. That day, we were both present. Every single word spoken still rings in our ears. Tian Fa will not be the place to start the war. The human race on the Xian continent can move around and live freely, wherever they want. But there is only one Tian Fa forest. Humans can have countless homes, but the Xian beasts of Tian Fa only have this single one. After everyone came to an agreement, us 9 brothers guarded the seal without any complaints. Admittedly, it is for the sake of the peace and harmony of the Xian continent, but it is also for the sake of making Tian Fa the sacred land of the Xian beasts. We had thought that with the 9 of us sacrificing wholeheartedly, we could at the very least ensure peace in Tian Fa for eternity. But we had never imagined you guys would go back on your words right before our eyes. What sort of logic is this? Don't tell me that vow and promise back then was just merely a worthless piece of paper. Were we, the Xian beasts, really so easy to dupe? That burly man's face was completely pale. His expression was somewhat dispirited. But he was extremely forceful when he spoke. There was an extremely furious look in his eyes as he stared intently at the 20 men before him. He made it clear that if there was any disagreement, they would start a battle immediately and there would be no room for salvation. Clearly, the other party's behavior of forcefully starting the war in Tian Fa without caring about the safety of Tian Fa had thoroughly enraged him. Saint Emperor Lu has misunderstood. The 9 Nether 14th young master is our common enemy. If this person is not eliminated, the danger and threat to the continent will never be resolved. With regards to what Saint Emperor Lu asked earlier, there are a lot of sudden changes in this situation, so do allow me give you an explanation at a later time. After all, we are all injured and need to immediately return to recuperate. A small matter like this can wait till the next time we meet. Then we shall clarify everything for good. Brother Chao gave a forced smile. Awkwardness plastered across his face. Small matter? Chao Guofeng, you are truly shameless. Are you telling me that this matter of Tian Fa is merely a small matter in your eyes? You're still trying to obscure the facts with your words. What I want is not that so-called explanation of yours. I want an honest answer. That burly man wore an extremely cold expression as he spoke in a deep voice. If you lot do not give me an answer today, then all 20 of you can remain in Tian Fa. Just because you are Saint Emperor experts, you think can invert right and wrong in Tian Fa? This Tianfa Saint Emperor really has quite a temper. Jun Moxie, who had concealed himself, mentally exclaimed in admiration. Although this fellow was simple-minded and had an upright character, causing him to easily be tricked and taken advantage of, but when he really argued, he didn't give a shut. Like a real man. Chao Guofeng snickered. Brother Lu, if this was over 300 years ago, perhaps I really would have considered carefully when you made this statement. But after being completely exhausted after 375 years, you wish to hold all 20 of us back in here. Huh. Even though we have all sustained injuries. But I highly doubt that is possible. Conversely, if we take the risk of our injuries worsening, which side do you reckon will have a greater chance of leaving this place alive? Beside him, another person snickered and added. Brother Lu, as the saying goes, everything changes with time. Those days where the world cowered at the feet of Tianfa are long over. It will never return. We are all old acquaintances. Why can't we talk over this amicably? Why must we have to engage in meaningless brawl? With the current strength of Tianfa, is it really capable of doing any good? Saint Emperor Lu's expression darkened. He said coldly, well said. What you mean is that, you begged us for help when we were strong. Now that we are not as powerful, we should be at your mercy. Allow others to butcher us? Although this was what everyone meant, some things were better left unsaid. But he had spelt it out so clearly, causing the few Saint Emperors and Saint Kings to feel a little embarrassed. After all, the 9 Saint Kings of Tianfa had devotedly guarded the 9 Nether 14th young master for so many years. And clearly, Tianfa was doing them a favor. But the reason they did not fulfill their end of the promise was because they no longer had any use for Tianfa, so they decided to destroy the bridge after crossing the River One. And no matter how hypocritical these Saint King experts were, they still needed to preserve their last shred of dignity. So there was no way they could openly admit to this. The clenched fist is the strongest argument. It is a fact that the current Tianfa's strength is far from how it was in the past. Saint Emperor Lu is always open and honest. I believe you would not deny this fact. That white-clothed man paused for a moment before continuing. That is the rule of the pugilistic world. And that is the way it has been for 10,000 years. Comradeship and loyalty. Saint Emperor Lu. In this iron-blooded pugilistic world, don't you think that they're just a joke? The one surnamed by. Can I take it as you are speaking on behalf of the misty illusory manor? The Saint Emperor Lu took a step forward, a glow radiating in his eyes, and he stared at his face, his hair and beard flaring upwards. Of those from the misty illusory manor present here, I am the most senior one here. The white-clothed man hesitated for a moment before raising his head and replying. This sentence not only outrightly admitted to all the things said earlier, but also represented the standpoint of the entire misty illusory manor. Good. 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 Saint Emperor Lu nodded his head heavily and said. His gaze turned to the other people. Everyone from the 3 holy lands also means this? Everyone exchanged looks. A long while passed, but still no one spoke up. That person from misty illusory manor had already made things clear. They were both on the same team, and if they denied it, they would have offended the misty illusory manor. If they admitted to it, they would offend Tianfa Forest. They were completely caught in the middle. They were all cursing that brother Bai in their heads for driving all them to the edge of the cliff. But these people thought about how their juniors had targeted Tianfa not too long ago. And even ganged up to beat the current lord of Tianfa Venerable Mei to death. This vengeance and hatred alone had already made it impossible for both of them to share the same sky. And now these seniors of TNFA have re-emerged. There was no way they could hide the incident. Might as well be honest and make it clear first. And now TNFA Forest had been greatly weakened, and these 9 senior Beast Kings were on the verge of dying. The junior Beast Kings were still weak. It seemed that there was no need to be this careful. Might as well keep silent and admit to it silently. Looking at the awkward and guilty expressions on everyone's faces, yet the fact no one was speaking, Saint Emperor Lu couldn't help but laugh coldly in indignation. Good. Great. It's excellent. For the sake of an illusory, unreal promise, we 9 brothers had slogged for almost 400 years. To the point that even our primordial spirit was severely damaged. Under the impacts from the seals, we have really become spent forces. Since the 3 Holy Lands and Misty Illusory Manor think that the current TNFA is nothing, then this seat does not have the cheek to demand for an answer. This being the case, this tiny little TNFA forest is also unable to receive deities like yourselves. Farewell. All of you. I shall not see you off. His eyes suddenly glared and he declared. From now on, all ties shall be severed. TNFA will also not be involved in anything concerning the Xian continent. Even that war for seizing the heavens is none of our business. Friendship and gratitude of 10,000 years shall all be written off in one strike. Take it as it had never existed. From now on, we are strangers. If any humans dares to trespass into the ferocious land of TNFA, their fate shall be entirely up to heaven. He sounded determined to sever all ties, as if he was in great grief and anger. A grief that came from deep within could be heard in his words. And the meaning behind his words was very clear. From now onwards, they were no longer friends or allies, but enemies. In just a couple of sentences, the 5 greatest powers of the Xian continent fell apart. Saint Emperor Lu could not be blamed for being reckless regarding this matter. Saint Emperor Lu and his 8 brothers were in extreme grief and fury. When that solemn vow was taken, all 4 parties had simultaneously made a serious promise that they would ensure the peace of TNFA Forest and even give more generous conditions. Thus, the 9 Beast Kings were willing to sacrifice themselves and enter the mist formation set up by the illusory manor, devotedly guarding it, resisting the strikes from the 9 Nether 14th young master with all their might. Before entering the forbidden grounds, amongst these 9 great Beast Kings, Saint Emperor Lu, who had the highest cultivation level, had the strength of a first-level Saint Emperor. The other 8 Beast Kings were all at the level of Saint Kings. 3 of them had even reached the 2nd level of a Saint King. But in this duration of almost 400 years, the 9 Nether 14th young master had struggled incessantly, day and night, dragging these 9 men along with him through hundreds of years of torment. Originally, this sort of high-level resistance would allow them to easily upgrade in their strength. But they could not achieve it because they were stuck in the crucial positions of the seal. Not only were they unable to level up, it had extremely detrimental effects to their body, damages that were almost impossible to recover from. The strength of these 9 Beast Kings was constantly sucked into the seal so supported. So they practiced without rest. But it was not enough to supply the amount of energy the seal consumed. Never mind just having their strength sucked away. But coupled with the 9 Nether 14th young master's incessant attempts at breaking free, the amount of energy the seal required also gradually increased. To the point in recent years, it led to their pitiful state, both physically and mentally. For almost 400 years, these seniors Beast Kings not only did not make any improvements, but compared to before, they had weakened drastically. And they suffered injuries that they would never fully recover from. These were injuries that consumed them from the inside. wearing them down mentally, cutting their lifespan short. But this was something that no miraculous medicine that had appeared on Xian continent could replenish and heal. 375 years. Those junior saints from the three holy lands back then had already become saint emperors. The Saint King experts from back then had all successfully leveled up to become saint emperors. But these 9 brothers ended up like this after wasting 375 years. They had suffered a huge disadvantage with this alone. But they did not expect that the moment the 9 Nether 14th young master have escaped and the seal lost its effectiveness, these people immediately shamelessly fell out and turned hostile, destroying the bridge after they crossed the river. Not only did they go back on their promise, they even insisted on starting the battle in Tianfa. The most despicable deceit and the most shameless replies and excuses left people bitterly disappointed. All the solemn promises of the 3 holy lands and misty illusory manner were merely a worthless piece of paper. A giant joke that was not amusing at all. Thank goodness. For some reason, the 9 Nether 14th young master stayed in the air since he came out. Otherwise, the entire surrounding region would already have been thoroughly ruined. This story will be continued to chapter 821. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.